Hello. Today we are going to talk about Australian trade policy. Our group is 29 S1, and we are here today. We are here three members presenting. I'm Prem Chandra Chapagai, and I'm going to talk about the introduction. Australia benefits from international trade like any other country. In this age of globalization, the country can benefit from exporting the goods they have produced in surplus, and also they can benefit from importing the goods which are more expensive to produce by themselves. Today, particularly, we are going to talk about the policies and strategies that Australia has formulated to, to practice effective trade, in this particular case, international trade. WTO is World Trade Organization. It's the organization which regulates the trade between different countries in the world. WTO headquarters is in Geneva, and it has 163 members. As one of the 163 members of World Trade Organization, Australia benefits from the most favored nation and non-discrimination provision while engaging in international trade with other member nations. In practice, this means that Australia is treated the same as another country most favored trading partner would be, and the Australian products are treated equally to the identical domestic products of trading partner. In addition to being WTO member, Australia has other bilateral trade partners like Vietnam, China, US. Now I'd like to invite my colleagues to continue our presentation.
Good evening, my name is Rajesh. I'll be starting with trade agreements currently in force in Australia. So, a few countries that are in the trade agreement with Australia are Australia, New Zealand, Closer Economic Relations Trade Agreement, Australia-US Free Trade Agreement, and so on. Continuing, I'd like to go to the topic trade negotiations. Australia is currently negotiating a number of trade agreements from separate bilateral agreement with India and Indonesia, the regional agreements with the Gulf Cooperation Council and the European Union to the multilateral agreements via the WTO on environmental goods. In Australia and overseas, trade is currently being disrupted by a significant rise in protectionist measures. In part, these are a direct consequence of changing nature of trade agreements. Trade agreements now frequently provide significant trade obligations in areas such as investment, environment, and other areas of public regulations. Protectionist measures include the application of trade restrictive measures, particularly anti-dumping, as well as the trade treatment of foreign investment. So, anti-dumping measures, which I mentioned earlier, I'll be explaining it in detail now. The latest report by WTO on G20 trade measures highlighted that between mid-October 2015 and mid-May 2016, some 145 new trade restrictive measures were introduced. This was the highest number of new measures introduced since the report series began, since 2008, during the global financial crisis. Although Australia's initiations on anti-dumping investigation has fallen slightly from the previous year, 17 matters were still initiated. As noted in a recent Productivity Commission report, anti-dumping measures have recently been strengthened and there have been calls to strengthen it further. A direct link was found between countries with highly protectionist anti-dumping systems and the level and value of imports subject to duties. Now I'd like to call my colleague Ali to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. Now I'm going to talk about foreign investor protections. Concerns have been raised by a number of academics, the Productivity Commissions, and even the Chief Justice of High Court about protections granted to foreign investors under the trade agreements, principally Investor-State Dispute Settlement (ISDS) provisions. ISDS provisions in trade agreement provide a mechanism for foreign investors, including Australian investors investing overseas, to seek recourse in an international tribunal in the event that a host government to the agreement breaches its investment obligations. To continue with the presentation, I'm going to talk about Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is called as TPP. One of the most high-profile trade agreements, the Trans-Pacific Partnership contains ISDS provisions. The TPP was signed on 4th of February 2016 and includes 12 signatories, which is Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, New Zealand, Singapore, and the United States and Vietnam. These 12 nations account for around 40% of global GDP. Although concerns have been raised, many of Australia's existing trade agreements contain ISDS provisions, including some with other TPP nations. Of the 10 trade agreements above, only the agreements with New Zealand, Malaysia, the United States, and Japan do not contain ISDS clauses. Table 2 illustrates that Australia already has ISDS provisions with the vast majority of TPP nations. Now I'm going to conclude this presentation. I'm going to mention some points here. Australia has strong trade ties with the rest of the world. Its location has also allowed Australia to become a major supplier to markets in the Asia-Pacific region. The Australian government has a number of policies that seek to develop and assist Australian businesses involved in international trade. Regulation also exists to protect domestic industries, consumers, and the environment from harmful and dangerous goods imported from overseas. Australia has 6 free trade agreements, FTAs, with other countries in force and another 8 under negotiation. The FTAs contain legally binding commitments by each member to liberalize access to their markets for goods and services as well as investment. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks again. Thank you.